For 85 years, we told ourselves a comforting lie. We told ourselves that Pluto was dead. We dismissed it as a frozen mistake at the edge of the solar system, a ball of rock and ice so insignificant that we stripped it of its planetary status in 2006. We thought it was a tomb, a silent graveyard orbiting in the dark. But when the New Horizons probe screamed past the Dwarf Planet in July 2015, traveling at 36,000 miles per hour, it didn't send back images of a corpse. It sent back images of a monster. NASA expected a cratered wasteland, frozen in static silence for 4 billion years. Instead, they found a world that is geologically alive. Mountains made of water ice as hard as granite, floating on a sea of solid nitrogen. Volcanoes that don't spew lava, but vomit freezing slush. In a surface that is constantly renewing itself, erasing its own scars like healing skin. Something is moving inside Pluto. Something is generating heat where the laws of physics say there should be absolute zero. This is Dark Sector X. Today, we are opening the Kuiper File. We are going to dive beneath the nitrogen crust to find the impossible engine driving this world. We will discover why Pluto's heart is actually a gravitational weapon, tipping the entire planet over, and address the terrifying biological implications of the ocean hiding in the dark. Pluto isn't a planet, it's an incubator. To understand the anomaly, you must first grasp the environment. You have to understand the sheer, crushing isolation of the Kuiper belt. Pluto sits roughly 3 billion miles from the Sun. At this distance, sunlight is 2,000 times dimmer than it is on Earth. If you stood on the surface of Pluto at noon, it would look like twilight on Earth. The average surface temperature is minus 380 degrees Fahrenheit. Let that number sink in. Minus 380. At this temperature, the thermodynamics of the universe grind to a halt. Oxygen and nitrogen, the gases we breathe right now, turn into solid rock. Water ice becomes as brittle and hard as tempered steel. In these conditions, a planet should be a static, frozen sculpture, locked in stasis since the dawn of time. Energy requires a source. Earth has a molten core, kept hot by the decay of radioactive elements and the immense pressure of its own gravity. Jupiter radiates heat from its sheer mass. But Pluto? Pluto is tiny. Its diameter is less than the width of the United States. It is smaller than our own moon. By all standard planetary models, Pluto's core should have gone cold billions of years ago. All the radioactive heat should have leaked out into the vacuum. It should be a solid block of ice, heavily cratered by eons of asteroid impacts. Yet, when New Horizons turned its long-range reconnaissance imager toward the vast white plain known as Sputnik Planitia, the data was terrifyingly clean. There were no craters. None. In a shooting gallery like the Kuiper Belt, where debris has been flying around for 4.5 billion years, this is physically impossible. It implies that the surface of this region is less than 10 million years old. It means the planet is paving over itself. Imagine looking at a graveyard and seeing fresh dirt on every grave every single morning. That is what we are seeing on Pluto. Something is pushing up from below, churning the surface, erasing history. But where is the energy coming from? The answer lies in a substance that shouldn't exist in liquid form, in a color that looks suspiciously like dried blood. Let's talk about the color. If you look at the enhanced images of Pluto, you see vast swaths of dark red and brown, particularly around the equator in a region NASA named Cthulhu Macula. NASA calls these red stains Tholins. Tholins are complex organic molecules. They are formed when ultraviolet light from the distant sun hits methane and nitrogen in the atmosphere, breaking them down. These particles then drift down like a slow, toxic snow, coating the ice in a layer of hydrocarbons. It sounds like chemistry. It looks like gore. But the real horror is what happens when this red snow interacts with the geology beneath. Underneath that nitrogen shell, the evidence points to a massive global subsurface ocean. But this isn't water like the Pacific. If it were pure water, it would have frozen solid. This is a cryo-sludge. At these pressures, water mixes with ammonia. Ammonia acts as a potent antifreeze. It lowers the freezing point of water, allowing it to remain fluid even in the deep freeze of the outer solar system. This ocean is likely viscous, salty, and incredibly toxic, a poisonous womb wrapped in a shell of ice. This brings us to the Wright-Mons anomaly. It stands 2.5 miles high and spans 90 miles across. It looks like a volcano, but it lacks a distinct caldera. This is a cryovolcano. On Earth, volcanoes erupt molten rock. On Pluto, they erupt water. But recent analysis suggests something far more disturbing. The texture of the mountain's flanks suggests it wasn't built by explosive eruptions, it was built by oozing. Imagine a toothpaste tube the size of a mountain slowly squeezing out a semi-solid paste of water and ammonia over millions of years. This implies the internal pressure is constant, the planet is swollen. But here is the question that keeps astrobiologists awake at night. If you have organic molecules, a liquid solvent, and a heat source, do you have life? And if life evolved in a dark, toxic, high-pressure ocean of antifreeze, what would it look like? To find the source of the heat that keeps this nightmare alive, we must look up, to Charon. Pluto's largest moon is so big relative to its parent that they don't actually orbit each other in a traditional sense. They orbit a point in empty space between them, a barycenter. It is a binary planetary system. They are tidally locked. They face each other eternally. If you stood on one side of Pluto, Charon would hang in the sky forever, motionless like a painted eye, watching you. But the relationship is violent. The heart of Pluto, Sputnik Planitia, is a traitor. This basin is filled with nitrogen ice that is dense and heavy. As the nitrogen gas freezes and falls into this basin over millions of years, it adds mass, immense mass. This accumulation of weight was so significant that it actually physically tipped the entire planet over. NASA scientists call this true polar wander. Imagine a backpack so heavy that spins you around. Sputnik Planitia dragged the Pluto's crust, reorienting the planet so the heavy heart aligns directly opposite Charon. This alignment isn't an accident, it's a gravitational lock. This reorientation process isn't gentle, it stresses the crust, it grinds the bedrock. While radioactive decay from the core provides some heat, it is this gravitational torture, this constant shifting of mass and tidal stress that likely keeps the subsurface ocean liquid. Pluto is staying alive by consuming its own gravitational potential energy. It is a zombie world fueled by the mechanics of its own deformity. In that ocean we spoke of, it acts as a damper. It lubricates the crust, allowing it to slide over the core. Without that layer of toxic sludge, Pluto would have frozen solid eons ago. The ocean is the grease in the machine. So let's answer the open loops. The fresh dirt on the graves, that is the convection of the nitrogen ice. The heart is boiling in slow motion, driven by the heat trapped beneath the insulating shell. In the biological question, we used to think the Goldilocks zone, the distance from a star where water is liquid, was the only place life could exist. We were wrong. Pluto proves that a world can generate its own habitable zone, buried miles beneath the ice in the absolute dark. But life in such a place would not be photosynthetic, it would not need light, it would feed on chemical disequilibrium. It would be slow, ancient, and utterly alien to our understanding of biology. We demoted Pluto because we wanted the solar system to be neat, organized, understandable, but the universe doesn't care about our categories. Pluto is a warning. It tells us that even in the coldest, darkest corners of the void, there is activity, there is heat, and where there is heat, there is the potential for something to be looking back at us. We left Pluto alone for billions of years. Maybe we should have kept it that way. The abyss
is deeper than you think. If you want to explore the nightmares hiding in the ice, subscribe to Dark Sector X. We are watching the dark.